escape. Enterprise goes heading out, but with the way it's situated, they'll have to blow up the Janolan, so the order is given to beam them off and then fire. Wait, the shields are up. Never mind that. We can't beam through the shields. We did a whole episode about it. I only have the shields up in the front and the back. I call no way. I hate this bloody century. So they get beamed out anyway, and Enterprise escapes, and then they give Scotty a shuttle as a goodbye present. But he's decided not to retire just yet, and flies off to star in numerous comic books and paperbacks. The post-episode follow-up. Annoying character is awarded to the little pipsqueak. I hope the slime monster gets you. Final score for Relics is 8 out of 10, and I know that will be somewhat controversial, as it often makes Trek Top 10 lists. But while I think it's great, it's not one of TNG's greatest. The episode is boosted by the effective presence of Scotty and good performances by our team, but the plot is fairly thin, and some things are a little too ham-fisted in their presentation. Definite props, by the way, to Doohan for handling this different era of Trek, which is far more technobabble heavy, like the pro he is.
Oh, you didn't tell him how long it would really take, did you?
Could we blow it into pieces? The total mass of the moon would remain the same, Commander, and the impact of thousands of fragments would spread destruction over an even wider area.
Let's call that option Moron, after its creator, Commander William T. Moron, wreaker of falling death. Of course, I'm no expert on moons. I'm just a viewer with an opinion.
99 red balloons floating in the summer sky. Panic bells, just red alert. There's something here from somewhere west. The war machine brings to life. Opens up one eager eye, focusing it on the sky. 99 red balloons go by.
So the episode begins with this falling moon over Brielle 4. It's rather small, but still large enough to cause massive damage. The Enterprise is working to try to stop it from causing Armageddon, but nothing seems like it'll work. Riker's plan of blowing it up is rejected on the grounds it'll make things worse, which is impressive when you realize we're talking about global damnation. I do have to give props, at least in part, on noting this, because in fact, even burning up in the atmosphere would be bad news. Why? Well, even ignoring everything else, when all that rock burns up, it's heat. So the atmosphere itself is going to be warmed up and likely alter the whole planet's climate. That's a pretty inconvenient truth. Well, since this is a problem that apparently can't be solved by Worf doing what Worf does best, it means we're just going to rely on Geordi. Now, if this story took place 5 years later, it'd probably require an inverted subspatial phase multispectral antiproton beam. However, this is Season 3 of TNG, a rather solid season all told, and I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Maurice had left after the second season and was replaced by Michael Piller. Anyway, point is that being at this time, there's no room for pages and pages of technobabble, so all Geordi says is that they need an extra 4 kps of delta V, well, that's change in velocity, and that's more than what the tractor beam can probably do. They tried, and well, it's more than what the tractor beam can do. So, score 1 for the guy with the banana clip on his face. Soon there's an odd noise, and Q materializes on the bridge, stark naked. They give him clothes, and he complains about the color, for which I can't blame him. All that powerful replication tech in the future, and he looks like he's wearing an oversized baby sleeper you'd find in the free bin at a garage sale. I think it's telling that the first thing Q does upon becoming omnipotent later is to change out of this god-awful uniform. It puts the tard in unitard, that's for sure. Q explains that because he causes chaos throughout the universe, the Q stripped him of his powers and made him human at his request, thinking that Picard was the closest thing he had to a friend. Sometimes Q's like that idiot in high school who thought it was funny to whack you in the balls as a way of saying hi. So Picard throws Q in the brig, making Worf very happy. Q mutters a bit about the full implications of the situation, of the totality of mortality that he'll have to experience now. We see the one and only time when Q actually kisses up to Worf, but lasts barely 10 seconds before Worf screams at him, another thing Worf is good at. Meanwhile, Riker and Picard discuss the situation, and while they don't buy that Q is mortal, they also know that they can't take the chance that he isn't. The ship also experiences a weird scan, which is enough to send Picard down to ask Q about both. Q insists that he's telling the truth and that he knows nothing about the scan, But when Picard goes to leave, he practically begs him to help, just so he can get out of the cell. So Picard puts Data in charge of Q, and Data admits that Q might be telling the truth, prompting this remark.
An irony. It means that you've achieved in disgrace what I have always aspired to be.
This is where the real strength of this episode is found. Data, having spent 3 years observing humans on Enterprise, now serves as a teacher to someone who has humanity thrust upon him. Both are outsiders, so while we have the fish-out-of-water element of the story, it has provided a fresh dimension by having the guide be someone who isn't exactly an air breather himself, to stretch the metaphor. Delancey and Spiner's performances are undoubtedly the high points of this episode, and the true basis for its success. I mean, the two plots themselves are rather simple, but both are well integrated and make excellent use of everyone's talents. So Geordi gives Q his idea of how to boost tractor beam power, but Q says it won't work. In his view, the solution is simple. Change the gravitational constant of the universe. In other words, redefine the nature of matter so that an object's inertia isn't what it normally is, and it'd be easier to move things. Well, obviously that's something we can't do, but Geordi soon realizes that warp kind of works the same way, so if they use the warp field, they can actually lighten the moon and move it. So they have a plan, but in the meantime, there's a few more bits with Data and Q, and they wind up in 10 forward. I won't comment on it, it's all good stuff. What we also get is Guinan, who decides she'll test whether or not Q is lying. There's a few ways you could do this, but Guinan decides her way will be grab some sharp tongs and stab him in the frickin' hand. Yeah, I get you don't like Q, but as a rule, I think that good guys should generally avoid going around and just stabbing unarmed people just because they don't like them. That doesn't sound like that evolved future of humanity to me. It sounds extremely petty, to tell you the truth. Even Jack Bauer won't torture somebody unless there's no other way, proving that Guinan is actually more callous than he is. Meanwhile, a swirling gas cloud shows up and begins scanning them. Picard asks the computer about it.
Signal patterns indicate intelligence, unable to derive necessary reference to establish translation matrix.
Oh, well, just remodulate the translator and... Oh, wait, I forgot. This was Season 3 of TNG, not Voyager, so we can't just throw out some idiotic jargon out there and magic the problem away. Well, it sends out a little white glowing thingy in and starts attacking Q, but they raise the shields and eventually stop it. At a meeting, it's revealed Q's real reason for showing up is that even though he's made life difficult for Enterprise, he knows they'd protect him from those out there who'd try to kill him. They discuss getting rid of Q, but Data actually stands up for him, and he and Q discuss the topic some more on their way to help Geordi. The Enterprise is trying out the plan of moving the moon, but it means lowering the shields, and the Calamarain, those cloud alien things, launch another attack, knocking Enterprise into the atmosphere and taking out Data when he tries to help. As they work to save Data, Q makes a few rather selfish comments, and Picard finally rants with disgust at Q's continued self-preoccupation. And in private, Q seems to reflect on how awful a person he is. He soon heads off to a shuttle bay and heads off to give himself up to the Calamarain. Picard does try to save him from his suicide run, but is stopped in his efforts by an unknown force. Now Q gets a visit from this guy, who's also named Q, because you see, all Qs are named Q. It saves time. Now, obviously, I can't go around calling all the Q by the same name, so from now on, John Delancey will be Q. This guy, well, fans have nicknamed him Q2, but that's just more confusing because Q2 is also the name of an episode starring Q, but that doesn't have this Q in it, just the John Delancey Q, and another Q who's not this Q. See the problem? All right, we'll just keep this simple. This is Pretty Boy Q, because Arnie Q just doesn't work, and Peg Boy Q is, well, too cruel even for me. Pretty Boy Q, incidentally, is played by Corbin Bernsen, who was a famous and popular actor back before the Berlin Wall fell down. At the time, this was a big deal, having him on the show, because he was doing L.A. Law along with Pulaski, that nasty boy's tarpy doctor, who played against type on that show as the nasty boy's tarpy lawyer. If only she'd fallen down an elevator shaft, too. Actually, there were so many appearances on that show and the Star Trek shows, you could probably pretend that L.A. Law was an extended holodeck program. Assuming, of course, you've given up on the idea of ever experiencing the touch of a woman. So Pretty Boy Q reveals he has been watching Q after he got thrown out, since Q is such a frickin' troublemaker. This is a continuation of the second viewpoint of Q, which continues from Q Who. In this viewpoint, Q is an imp who travels the universe causing mischief just to keep himself amused, a childish abuse of absolute power. The first viewpoint is that of the two first season episodes, where Q is an agent of the Continuum doing their dirty work, which he just happens to carry out in a manner that will amuse him. There will be different viewpoints as we move onward, but for now, Pretty Boy Q is concerned that with Q sacrificing himself to ensure that Brielle 4 and Enterprise are spared the Calamarine's wrath, that there could be issues that they maybe made a mistake with him. It's probably the weakest portion of this episode.